That damn Carolyn, she be cracking me up. Carolyn is funny. We had a good episode. Good episode. I'm not going to waste too much time. If y'all are new here, please hit subscribe. We are on the road to 10K. Please thumbs up the video. Get down there in the comments. Let me know y'all's thoughts on the episode. This was a good one. I cannot believe we're already done with episode 8. This is the end of episode 8 once I finish this recap, which means we only got 2 more weeks left, which sucks because Traitors is good. It's a good show. Every season I've enjoyed. But yeah, let's go. Let's get into it. All right, so we return from the cliffhanger where we're trying to figure out who's getting murdered in person. So we find out, essentially, as we all know, if Alan comes to meet the faithful, they're safe. If you see the traitors, you're murdered. They turn around, and then they show us going to breakfast. So I love how they do this, how we didn't really see it then. It just builds suspense. But at breakfast, Danielle and Britney, they're the first ones to walk in. And we already know who's going to walk in first because there were certain people that were down there at the church. But Danielle and Britney, they come in first. Danielle ends up asking, like, who would it make more sense for the traitors to kill? And Danielle saying to her confessionals, I'm giddy. I'm happy for game purposes. Nothing personal, but the faithfuls are going to be shook when they see who got murdered, which, good choice. Good choice. One of the ones that I told y'all last week that I would have murdered got murdered. Thank God. But we'll get to it. But the both of them, they're excited about Rob being out. Britney is saying like she has Danielle's back and she is 100% sure that she is a faithful. I said Danielle's game might be kind of working a little bit for some people, but Britney is off. But Sam, Ciara, and Ivar, they come in next. Ciara, she's talking about how she realized that Rob was the one that put her in the coffin and she's sitting there riding hard for him. I'm like, exactly. But Ciara, she ends up saying that Rob came in and sold out his own traitor and gained their trust. So, like, she's still, like, reeling over the fact that she was so gung-ho with wanting to be Team Rob. Rob is a faithful, just to now see, okay, all this shit that happened, he was doing it. I'm like, Ciara, wake up. But Sam, he decided to wake up. Sam decided to wake up today. But he ends up saying that the traitors are not as smart as they think, as we think that they are, which is true. One of them in particular. But you're right. The traitors are not as smart as they have been in the previous seasons. But Sam, he ends up talking about his life and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, is this foreshadow for him to get banished or murdered? But we'll see later on. But they're all realizing essentially all of them that are safe. They knew we're going to be safe. Everybody else is up for murder. They're kind of pretty much trying to figure out who it will be. And they're all worried about Tom, considering the fact that Tom was over there hitting it hard at the round table the last time. And they think, okay, well, a traitor just got revealed and just got banished. The obvious choice would be to kill Tom. But there's a knock at the door. Gabby walks in first. They ask her what happened. She starts describing everything, talking about how the church looked. Let them know that if Alan is safe, if you see Alan walking towards you, you're safe. And if you see the traitors, you're murdered. So she then asks who they think is going to get murdered. And Ciara and Danielle, they're saying Tom and Dylan. Between those two, Gabby's worried about Chrishell. Tom, he comes walking in. I was happy about that. Because like I said, the two that I would have murdered would have been Dylan or Chrishell. Because Dylan was playing like he was too busy swallowing Rob and like completely not paying attention to the traitor evidence that was up against Rob. When he, earlier in the season, was so gung-ho on that evidence that was against Bob, that was clear as day, but you couldn't pay attention to the stuff that was clear as day with Rob, so you had to go. I'd have had to send him home just because of that, because he's just being stupid at this point. And I don't want to say he's being stupid. I feel like he knows what he's doing, but you're just not being a good faithful. So I would have had to get him out of there. Even though if I'm a traitor, I'm supposed to be working for the traitors. But I'm just saying in general, as me, a viewer, he would have had to go. Chrishell definitely would have had to go. She got on my nerves because she's just being stupid. And she is stupid. Like, when it comes to this game, she's stupid. Like, sitting there voting for Tom every other... For what? For what? Because you weren't dating him. You weren't the one that was in a relationship with him. So why are you so bothered about Tom that you're not even focused on the fact that you're playing a game? Take that outside of it. That ain't got shit to do with it. Sitting there voting for Tom when you need to be voting for people that could possibly be traitors, which could potentially end up fucking up a vote. that could have been sending a traitor home. Like, you had to go. She was doing too much. But where was I at? Tom comes in. He's shocked. They all thought that he was going to be the one to go home, get murdered. I'm sorry. But Ciara, she ends up telling him that she was worried about him. He's being his dramatic self, explaining everything in his version of how he had gotten saved. Sam then picks up on the fact that the ones that are going to come in here and describe Alan the way Alan is, we can then put two and two together. So if they're describing Alan and it's all making sense, considering what the other previous ones that have come in have been safe, have been saying, we can kind of cross them off as being a faithful. The one that comes in here with a different story, we can mark them off as a traitor. I said, okay, Sam. Sam got it. I was like, Sam was thinking. And he ends up saying that too. He was like, pretty much saying like, if the traitor, what did he say? I wrote it down. He said, if the traitor, what I just said, basically, he just said that out loud to them. And Danielle's now looking at him a little suspicious because she's like, damn, he actually kind of smart. Rightfully so. But in walks Carolyn. I'm like, just how ironic. The moment he realized what he was supposed to do and then got everybody in there to understand it too, now everybody's looking at everybody that comes through. And of course, the one that comes through is a traitor, and it's Carolyn. The one that's the most like sporadic. But she comes walking in and everybody's looking at her very, very confused and very like, they're looking at her very, very cautiously. And she's coming in looking confused, which is good for her because she always comes in looking confused. So it's nothing too out of the ordinary. But Danielle was looking nervous. But Sam ends up asking her and saying like, what happened? We need to know what's going on. And like, what was your story? What happened? And she's sitting there looking confused. Sam continues to ask her again, we need to know. Carolyn says, I was nervous like I always am. But the lying, and then she's saying this in her confessionals, that the lying and keeping up with the lying is hard. So she now has to figure out how she's going to get out of this situation with them putting this pressure on her. Because she essentially knows at this point, she didn't see Alan. So she don't know what he looked like. And she's going to have to try and figure out a way to get on point with what they're trying to do. So Carolyn starts talking and saying like, it was pretty at first. I was a little bit nervous and whatnot. And you could tell they are suspicious of her descriptions because her description is not as dramatic as Gabby and Tom's was. But they get to the point where she's going back and forth. Ciara ends up asking Carolyn, what was Alan wearing? And she starts looking confused and starts stuttering. Tom's dumb ass, Tom is back to being stupid. He starts answering for Carolyn. And Danielle and Sam is looking at him like, what are you doing? We just literally told you what we're trying to do and trying to sniff them out. And here you go telling them the answer. And then as they sitting there looking at him, Britney was looking at him like, and he's starting to look like what did I just do? What did you just do? But Gabby was like, she talking about Carolyn was teetering on the line of pass or fail, but I think she passed. And Carolyn's confused, obviously, because she don't know what they're talking about. But I'd still be looking at Carolyn because she didn't answer the question. And then she looked very concerned whenever they were asking her. So they then start deliberating because it's between Dolores, Dylan, and Chrishell to be murdered. Dolores comes walking in. She's talking about how nervous she was. Dolores is noticing that Sam is looking at her very intently. But they get a knock at the door. And there's a flashback. Because we see their surprised faces. But there's a flashback to the murdering. And they murdered Chrishell. Get your dumb ass out of here. But Chrishell, she ends up finding out that it was Danielle and Carolyn that murdered her. They unhooded in front of her. And they hand her a letter and she ends up asking them why she was chosen. And Carolyn was like, you were too faithful. You would have never been banished. And she's like, well, that's unfortunate. Danielle said that's the point of the game. Like, we got to do what we got to do. That's what it was. I started laughing and they walked away. I was like, bye, fool. Get up out of here. But Chrishell says essentially she wasn't shocked that Danielle was a traitor, but Carolyn is. Props to her game. But Dylan, he walks in and they realize that it was Chrishell that got murdered. Gabby feels like she lost a friend. Obviously, Tom ends up saying that Chrishell never put herself out there until the vote was going in one direction. Britney ends up saying that's your personal vendetta that you have against her. And he said it just pisses me off because she was coasting. Hell gonna freeze over because I'm sitting here agreeing with Tom Sandoval. I can't stand Tom Sandoval. Like, watching Vanderpump Rules, I ain't never been a fan of him. But he's right. It's like she's the one that was holding a personal vendetta and letting that cloud her judgment when it came to voting and playing the game. I'm like, she was the one that was on that bullshit with Tom. Tom was actually playing the game. Yeah, he was wrong a lot of the time, but he could have easily voted for her when he wanted to because she was voting for him, but he didn't do that. She was the one being stupid voting for him just because she don't like him. Like, we're here to play a game. Put that shit to the side. But Ciara, she ends up saying the same could be said about Britney, though. Tom said no, she actually puts herself out there. But Alan ends up coming in, confirming Chrishell's murder, tells them to meet him outside for the mission. And Danielle, she ends up stating in her confessionals that she feels like she's in a good spot. Her and Carolyn can kind of run this castle now. So Carolyn ends up saying that she's having a hard time trusting people. Well, she has a hard time trusting people because of her experiences in the past. But she's trying to work with Danielle. She's trying to work with her, but she knows she got to take it one day at a time because Danielle has made it very hard for her to trust her. Which is true. Danielle has. Like, I love Danielle down. Y'all know that. But Danielle, the game has been very sloppy. But they disperse. Tom is talking to Carolyn, Dylan, Ciara, and Gabby outside because a lot of the groups, they're kind of like split up outside. And he's asking Carolyn about what happened the other day with him and Danielle, with her and Danielle. And says, like, essentially got lost in the shuffle with everything that was going on. I said, oh, shit. I was like, but then again, that's good, Tom, that you remember that and continue to bring it back up. You can never let evidence, or at least any kind of suspicion, any kind of interactions, you can never let that type of shit get to the back of your head. Even though y'all wasn't paying attention then, bring it up now. And you need to bring it up because you're talking about two traitors. But Carolyn, she ends up saying that Britney had told her that Danielle came up to her and was throwing her name, saying that Carolyn was throwing Britney's name out there. And Carolyn says in her confessionals, like, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus talking about Danielle. But if somebody brings it up, I can't lie because it would be suspicious. And it's true. Like, you can't lie because you was literally, that was your reason for coming for Danielle at that round table. And if she would have switched it up, it would have made her look like, why are you switching up your story now when you was literally coming for her then? And then I'd have been like, oh, traitor, hello. But Sam, he's talking to Dolores, Britney, Danielle, and Ivar on the other side of the field, talking about revisiting this coffin theory the night when all this shit happened. And he's like, especially considering the fact that we now know two of the traitors that were Bob, the drag queen, and Boston Rob, and they would not pass up the opportunity to get another traitor to get in that coffin. And I'm like, uh-oh, Ciara, you in trouble. But Sam ends up saying that he thinks a traitor was in that coffin and it was Ciara. You're wrong. But, okay, Britney ends up saying last night she was the only other vote against me besides Rob. And she says it's starting to make sense now because Rob was the traitor and he pinned this weak-ass argument against me. And Ciara was sitting there agreeing with everything he said. And she's now confident that it was Ciara. I said, you're wrong. But that's what you get, Ciara, for being stupid. Like, she, like Dylan, had moments where she was, like, thinking very logically and smart, but then got blinded by Rob for some odd reason. I'm like, you getting caught by association at this point. But Ciara, she's asking Gabby what she thinks about what's going on. And Ciara ends up saying that Britney and Danielle are both strategic and they have this alliance going on. And if they are traitors, they're going to take each other to the end. And she thinks that at least one of the two of them are traitors. I said, you're right. You just got to figure out which one it is. But Ciara says a bitch is lying and I'm a catcher. You right. A bitch is definitely lying, but we'll see if you get the right one. Ciara, I love how Ciara be cussing. Ciara be cussing just like me. I cuss every other word too. Cussing is like seasoning to my sentences. Like when it comes to certain things, even though I got an extensive vocabulary, I do trust and believe it. But when I want to convey a certain emotion, a certain cuss word just does it. But I see where Ciara coming from with it. But they head to it's time for the mission. They have to split into 2 teams of 5, which is that mission y'all know from the other seasons where they pretty much go out and call through the phone, and then the other team has to essentially figure out what it is. This time is lullabies that are being said backwards, and they're gonna have to pretty much do it through the phone, and they're gonna have to guess what the lullaby. Well, not guess. They're gonna have to repeat what was being said to them, the way it was being said, into this little thing, and this thing is gonna tell them it's not gonna tell them. It's gonna hum the correct lullaby the way it's supposed to have been sung. And they're going to have to figure out which one it is from there. And if they do, they get $5,000 added to the pot. There's $20,000 up for grabs. They split up into teams. One team, the team that's in the house, which is the one guessing, they don't get a chance to get a shield. The team that's out there doing the humming gets the chance to get a shield. That team is consisting of Tom, Danielle, Britney, Ivar, and Ciara. I was like, oh. Ciara in the group with Danielle and Britney. It's going to be interesting. The Castle group that does not get a chance to get a shield, which is to be protected from murder, Dylan, Dolores, Gabby, Sam, and Carolyn. So, the teams, they have 30 minutes to do it. There's 4 dolls out there in the woods. They head off. The team that is supposed to be out there humming, they head off with Alan. And we find out one doll has a clue that will pretty much tell them where the shield is. So, Britney, she wants the shield. They figure out that the shield clue is essentially by a bear in a bear. So they're mainly looking for this. They begin and they're looking for this damn bear. Like, everybody wants that shield. They're not even paying attention to the lullabies at this point. But the Castle crew, they sitting over there realizing, okay, they probably over there looking for shields because we ain't heard nobody calling his phone yet. But Tom eventually gets on the phone talking about he's the most musically inclined out of everybody on the team. I said, nigga, be for real. You and that weak-ass heavy metal shit that you just randomly started picking up the last couple seasons of Vanderpump Rules, which I find interesting, y'all. Y'all let me know if y'all want me to recap Vanderpump Rules. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've heard that they're not even going to have the same cast. We'll see. We'll see what that looks like. But Tom ends up singing it to them very terribly. And they commented on that as well. But they don't get it correct the first time. It gets down to 10 minutes. They end up getting one correct, which was Row Your Boat, $5,000 added. But they just start trickling them off. And it continues to go off. They start answering the questions. But Ciara, she ends up seeing, because they're outside of the house and they're on these steps and the bear is on the side of the step. Ciara ends up seeing the bear and getting her shield. So that's the worst person to get it if you Danielle or Britney, especially you, Danielle. But Danielle said she ain't want her to get it and she mad about it. But I'm like, you shouldn't want it because she coming for you and Britney. But they end up conveniently finishing the mission. I don't know if that, because it was 10 minutes left. And that's when they got their first one. And then they started trickling the rest of them out. I'm like, oh, is this convenient? But Alan ends up letting them know that a shield was won. He ends up telling the Castle people too. And ends up saying he'll leave it to the players to disclose who got it and who didn't. And the Castle crew, they essentially know nobody's going to say anything. Ciara, I'm like, Ciara might say it, but she didn't. But they head back to the house. And they all know that Ciara ended up getting the shield. Everybody that was out there with her. So Ciara, she's locking in on Britney and Danielle as her targets going forward. So, on the ride home, Ivar is telling Danielle to go for Ciara tonight. Danielle says, like, me and Carolyn, we need the faithfuls to focus on anything else besides us. So if they want to go for Ciara, we got to back them up on it. Smart. Like, literally do that. But Sam, he ends up telling Carolyn and Gabby that he believes that Ciara is a traitor because he feels like Rob and Bob had convinced her to get in that coffin. Gabby ends up saying, like, we have to be careful when it comes to Britney and Danielle. Sam says, I'm not ignoring that. But Carolyn ends up saying in her confessionals that she would rather Britney get banished because she's too close to Danielle. And if she gets banished, Danielle will be a lot more loyal to her. Carolyn is smart. Carolyn is smart. She's a gamer. I got to go back and watch. Like, I've watched so many Survivor seasons, but Survivor is like, shit, what's the show that's out here to be out? Like Grey's Anatomy. There's so many seasons. And I think I missed her season. I got to go back and watch her season. Because I love me some Carolyn. Carolyn, I love her. But I want to see how she plays Survivor, considering the fact that I know she got very far. But she ends up saying that. But the Woods team, they end up arriving back to the house. And Dylan, he's sitting there talking about how Derek was right when it came to Rob. But he also brought up Britney. So essentially, he's holding on to what Derek has said. It's funny that you're doing it now. You should have listened to Derek before. But he ends up saying that Britney, even though she defended herself well, there's still something to what Derek was saying. No, there's not. Not when it comes to Britney. Britney, he literally only lumped her in because she was not following his suit. Like, he pretty much threw that back on her. So you're off with that. Leave Britney alone. But Carolyn, she ends up pulling Ciara and pretty much tells her, like, people have been talking about you in this coffin sheet. And Ciara says, like, I knew it was going to get back to that. Like, I knew essentially it was going to get back to that. So they sit down and Carolyn ends up asking, like, what are you thinking tonight? Like, what do you think is going on? Ciara says, I don't trust Britney or Danielle because they're in an alliance. Carolyn says they trust each other too. And Ciara says, like, they're gamers. Like, Big Brother is a strategy game. It is. Ciara then says that Danielle and the overdramatics, like her crying, the shaking and stuff, is too much. It's true. Like, to a certain degree, that shit makes you look suspicious. But she ends up saying, like, if y'all want to talk about the coffin theory, Jeremy was the one that died. And he was the one that last mentioned Danielle as being a traitor. I said, oh, shit, Danielle. If she pulls that angle, and really back and stands on it. Curtains, Danielle, curtains. But Britney, her and Danielle, they're strategizing, and Ciara, they're pretty much saying like Ciara is the most obvious traitor. She's not, but she's the most talked about right now, so it makes sense to lock in on her to make sure y'all don't get voted out. But everybody's scrambling around trying to figure out what's going on, who's the majority, whatever. And it seems like it's essentially going to be between Ciara and Britney. But Sam ends up asking Dolores, would she defend Danielle if her name came up? And she ain't answer. But Ciara, she ends up coming in there and joining them after they mentioned her. And Dolores ends up asking her, like, what are you thinking? She says, I don't know, but I'm hearing this coffin shit is coming up again. And Sam was like, so what's your thoughts on it? She says pretty much what she just said to Carolyn. Who died that night when we was in the coffins? Jeremy. And who was the person that he said as a potential traitor? Danielle. Her name was in his mouth when he died. Valid, like, if y'all smart, y'all would listen to that. It's like y'all looking at evidence, the whole coffin shit. You want to think about the coffin theory and the night of the coffin. Y'all are sitting here hoping and thinking that a traitor would try and convince another traitor to get in there. But Ciara's theory is a lot more logical, and you can honestly say that's a fact because you've heard Jeremy mention Danielle's name. You see Jeremy got murdered. You see Danielle is still here. If you were smart, you would do what Ciara's doing, but dumb. But Dolores ends up saying, so are you going to try and throw Danielle or Britney's name out? And Ciara says, like, I ain't the type of bitch that's going to back down from anything. Like I said, I love the way she just be cussing and black. But they get to the round table. I immediately knew Danielle ain't going nowhere because she wasn't wearing that fit with that hat. But she wearing it next week. I'm nervous. I'm nervous. But Carolyn, she's nervous for Danielle because she got all that heat on her. She ain't worried about herself, but she's worried about Danielle. She's like, I can't really defend her because if I do, it's going to put heat on me. But Alan, he comes in, and I was looking at Carolyn to see if she started jumping because y'all remember she jumped last week. But she kind of like, she was about to, but she didn't. Carolyn cracks me up, man. She got to be on another show. But Alan, he ends up giving them the floor. Ciara starts it off. She says, I feel like this coffin theory is alive again. And she's like, there were no traitors in the coffin. Like, essentially, the two that ended up getting banished and murdered, essentially, the two that were down there with me, they were faithfuls, and I am as well. Ivar says it's not just that. We believe that the remaining traitors are likely to be girls. And Tom says, this part right here had me hollering. But Tom says at least one. He then proceeds to say that historically, women are better cheaters than guys because they have better social skills. When I tell you every woman at that table got on his ass, I fucking holler. Danielle said, I know that didn't come out of your mouth. And he says, did I say cheaters? I meant traitors. Yeah, you said cheaters. Danielle, Britney said, you said cheaters. And he says, no, I meant to say traitors. He's like, obviously you guys are more historically more inclined to cheat than women are. And Ciara says, we know that you know that. I died laughing. That scene was hilarious. But Sam, he ends up getting back to the coffin theory, and he ends up saying, like, if we don't close that theory, we will never know. You could close it by listening to Ciara, but okay. But Britney ends up saying that it was telling for me that the only two votes against me last night was you and Rob. And Ciara says, I voted for you because you essentially skated through a lot of round tables and haven't really had a voice. I said that can also be true for Ivar and Sam until recently. But Ciara ends up saying, like, a traitor would lay low considering the fact that the two that were revealed were pretty boisterous and very outspoken traitors, or appearing to be faithful. But Britney ends up saying laying low is more faithful than traitor behavior because faithfuls are more worried about making it out every single night, whereas a traitor is able to play a more obvious game like Rob and Bob did. That is true. Britney kind of shut her down. But Ciara then pivots to the Jeremy thing. She didn't stay on it as hard as she should have. If she would have stayed on it a little bit harder, she might have convinced somebody. But she ends up saying Jeremy also ended up dead, and the last person whose name was in his mouth was Danielle's. I said, oh, shit. Danielle ends up saying, like, I was shocked when he said my name, but I'm a faithful. She said, I voted against Boston Rob twice, and you look at the people that were taken out of the game, they're the ones that was closest to me. She starts naming off all the people, like Chanel Ayan, Bob the Drag Queen, Derek. That is true, but also, and because she ends up saying, like, there's no reason I would kill those people. And that's my case, and that's all I'm going to say. I said, that's a good way to pitch it to dumb faithfuls. Because dumb faithfuls will be like, okay, yeah, she's right. Somebody like me or somebody like Carolyn, who's smart, would have been like, okay, that's the easiest way to call you a traitor, because obviously you're going to kill. You killing off people that are closest to you would make you not be suspicious, which would make you all suspicious for me. Like, you're doing, like, you would do something that you would think people wouldn't catch on to. But if you really watch game shows, you would know that that's the strategy. Like, that's the point. But Tom ends up saying when Ciara got put in the coffin, Ciara was yelling, fuck y'all traitors, and da-da-da-da. And Sam was like, yeah, I like that that's your personality and everything, but it seemed premeditated. Ciara said, I don't have to try hard to be a badass. Like, I choose, when it comes to fight or flight mode, I choose to fight. And she said, it could get me killed, yes, but I'd rather die loyal and faithful. Ivar ends up saying, like, with Bob and Rob being traitors that are very powerful, they might have thought it was smart to have a traitor in the coffin, and they persuaded you. Ciara cracked me up right here. She said, respectfully, that's bullshit. She said, ain't nobody gonna convince me to get in no damn coffin. She said, it damn sure ain't gonna be Rob or Bob the fucking drag queen. Get the fuck out of here. She said, I ain't nobody convincing me of shit. I started dying laughing because it was something I would have said. But it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best pitch for her. It's pretty much saying, like, yeah, can't nobody tell me what to do, but in terms of, like, trying to pitch your game and trying to, like, get heat off of you, per se, it didn't really work in her favor. But she ends up saying, like, y'all gonna essentially get rid of the coffin theory, but it ain't gonna be what you want, and because I'm gonna get up here and tell y'all that I'm a faithful, and then y'all gonna be sitting here looking stupid again. She ain't lying. But it's time to vote, and it was damn near, was it damn near? It was, yeah, it was. It was unanimous taking out Ciara's vote. But they all voted for Ciara. It was funny to me because Danielle always gets the deciding vote. I don't know if y'all are catching this, but she always ends up getting a vote to send somebody home. But Ciara voted for Britney. Britney's rolling her eyes. I'm like, why are you rolling your eyes? Because you should have known she was going to vote for you. But she goes up there and tells them that she's a faithful. They're sitting there with their mouths open looking like idiots. But they disperse. And Tom, he's pretty much saying like he didn't think Ciara was a traitor. But Sam's argument was so strong. Dylan's sitting there talking about something. Well, that's the part that sucks when everybody says they didn't think that somebody was one, but didn't pitch it when they're in control of their own. Like, we're essentially in control of our own fate. I said, duh, dipshit. But you don't want to be out here voting for Gabby and don't be really pitching anything when it matters. You only say, like, when he was throwing them little wing votes towards the end, like a couple episodes back to back, when he would vote for Gabby randomly and then start pitching it while he's voting for her. Why don't you pitch that shit when it matters before y'all vote? So it's like, you could say that, but it applies to you too. But Dylan ends up saying like this was the hardest vote for him because he went with the popular vote for the first time. But Carolyn, she ends up asking Tom like who had the shield. She's sitting in there with Gabby and Tom asking Tom who had the shield because Tom was in the group with the shield and her and Gabby were not. And he's saying, I'm not saying anything. Carolyn says, so maybe the shield left. It did, you're right. And she then ends up asking if the shield just left, and he denies it, lying. And says, like, it would have essentially been a waste of a shield, because that's what Gabby was saying. And Carolyn is looking him dead in his face. She's looking at him like, nigga, I know you fucking lying. But Tom ends up saying, like, he wants to keep it hidden as much as possible to make sure that his team is safe. I'm like, okay, but what if there's a traitor in your team? But Sam, Ivar, and Dylan, they're in the book room. They're talking. As they're in there talking, Danielle and Carolyn come in that bar where the book room is to sit in front of the bar. I was like, oh shit, what's about to happen? But Danielle ends up asking if she and Carolyn are good. Like, are we good? I'm like, they're going to end up hearing them. Dylan ends up saying, like, to Sam and Ivar that the girls know they're in the hot seat because two of the traitors were men. Essentially, they're thinking, okay, 2 traitors will be men, 2 traitors will be women. It's true. But Carolyn ends up saying, you won't tell me who got the, talking to Danielle, you won't tell me who got the shield. Danielle says, I'll tell you later. And they start laughing. I'm like, why are y'all doing this in public? Like, y'all are in a wide open space. If y'all was in a room, it'd be one thing. But y'all are in a damn bar that is wide open. Anybody can walk through. And I'm like, y'all should know that somebody could easily be in that bookshelf room because y'all, as the traitors, met back there. Like, come on, think logically. But they start laughing, and Dylan, Sam, and Ivar end up hearing them. And Dylan gets up. And Danielle's sitting there telling Carolyn, I got a plan too, girl. Like, I'm going to tell you when we get in this turret. Dylan starts opening the door, and Carolyn's like, oh, shit, hide. And then they start turning around and looking at Dylan, and Dylan's looking at them. Dylan comes out laughing, talking about what's up. And they ask, like, who's in there with you? And he ends up saying Sam and Ivar. They played this right, though. Because essentially they could have been looking suspicious, but him coming out with 2 other people in there and they're not following you out, it makes you look suspicious now. So they played into that. Danielle says, that looks sus. And he says, whatever. And Carolyn's sitting there looking like, the fuck is going on? And he ends up asking, he's like, I can leave if y'all want. And Danielle says, like, it's just weird. And Dylan says in his confessionals that he's suspicious of Gabby, but Britney and Danielle are gamers. So he ends up saying, like, me and Danielle have trusted each other throughout this game, but her shaking and stuff, it could be an act. And there's valid suspicion on her, and he has to at least look at that. I said, oh, it's interesting that you're looking at it with Danielle, but you didn't want to look at any of that shit that was valid evidence for Rob. But you're right this time, but it's just interesting. But Alan, he ends up letting us know that Carolyn and Danielle get the choice to choose between murdering and recruiting tonight. So they both get down there. They're both worried about the women's theory that's going around. And Carolyn ends up saying, like, we got to murder somebody who makes sense. They agree that they had a good day today, money-wise. Danielle ends up letting Carolyn know that Ciara had the shield. And Carolyn is looking doubtful because of that conversation she just had with Tom. She already don't trust Danielle, which is why she's probably like, "What? I don't know if you're telling me the truth." Because he done went over here and told me that she didn't. And for the most part, Tom is not on the show playing the game, he's not proven to be a liar. So that's where I can see her trying to take his word over Danielle's, considering the fact that she already knows Danielle has tried to come for her. Danielle has lied to her. So she don't trust Danielle. So at this point, she's more inclined to believe Tom than she is Danielle. But Danielle is sitting there like pleading her case. Like, I'm telling you, she had the shield. Danielle knows that she's like not really trusting her, but she's telling her the truth this time. But Alan, he ends up knocking at the door. He comes in and lets them know they have a choice to either murder or recruit. He walks out. Danielle says, we need to recruit. Carolyn says, no, I'd rather murder. I agreed with Carolyn in the moment, but we'll get to it. Danielle ends up saying, we need more people because we'll probably end up getting sniffed out. Danielle might be right this time because the girls' theory that's going around now, she about to say what I'm thinking. Because I'm like, at this point, it could be everybody's theories, because essentially everybody's theories are done. The other theories are essentially done besides the women. The women theory, like the women are probably traitors. And then you got Danielle and Jeremy's thing. And then you got Danielle versus Carolyn. So regardless, Danielle is an option for 3 different theories. Carolyn is for 2. Danielle's right. You got to recruit. But Carolyn, she ends up saying it's going to be hard enough for us it's been hard enough for us to be on the same page and not coming for each other. And Danielle says, like, if they think it's female traitors, the girls are going to keep going up and revealing that they're faithfuls, which is going to leave us to be banished. And Carolyn ends up saying, like, there's a lot of females left. Danielle says, no, it's not. Like, there's literally Dolores, Gabby, and Britney, and then it's me and you. And Carolyn's like, yeah, I agree, but the only person that I would never believe to be a traitor or would want to be a traitor would be Dolores. So it's between Gabby and Britney. Danielle says, so who would you be open to? Carolyn says Gabby, obviously. Because why would she say Britney? And Danielle says, really? I'm like, what you mean, really? Why would she say Britney? And Carolyn says Britney is game. Well, no, Danielle says Britney is game savvy, kind of using that as a reason as to why Carolyn would want her to be with you. Why would Carolyn want your ace boon coon to be in here with y'all as a trio? Because if push comes to shove, y'all gonna have each other's back before you have hers, and she's sitting there by herself. I fully agree with Carolyn. But Carolyn ends up saying, like, you want that in here? I don't. She said it makes 0 sense why I would feel good about you bringing your best friend in here. And Danielle said, she's not my best friend. She said she is. And I started laughing. She said that would be stupid of me to bring her in here. I want anybody but Britney. She's not lying. It would be stupid of her. But Danielle ends up asking her why. And if she thinks that Danielle and Britney would team up against her, she said, absolutely. Carolyn is so blunt. But Danielle ends up saying, like, the goal is for us to win together. It might be right now, but I don't believe Danielle either. Danielle is playing like she wants to take this to the end with Carolyn. Maybe she does. But I don't believe Danielle. I would be playing that same game that Danielle's playing, and I would try and cut Carolyn at the end too. because I want the money by myself. If I get the chance to cut somebody and keep all the money myself, I'm doing it. But Carolyn ends up saying to her confessionals, do you think I'm stupid? Like, it's only good for you. Like, she's saying, like, Danielle's trying to convince me that it would be good to have Britney here, but it's only a benefit to you and not me. Carolyn's not lying. But Danielle ends up telling her that she wants to get the three of them to the end. Well, she wants to get her to get to the end with Carolyn and the three female gamers. They can make history together, essentially. Carolyn says, but I can't trust you. And Danielle says, we'll split the money. Carolyn said, girl... This was a good episode. This is a good episode. Y'all let me know what y'all thought down below. If y'all have not already, please subscribe. Also, if you haven't already, please thumbs up the video. That helps out so much. And get in the comments because I did a good recap this week. Y'all know I'm a perfectionist. I got OCD like a motherfucker. And whenever I feel like I didn't do my best, I hate it. But I can't recreate energy. I do it off first take, no cuts. So, yeah, I'm proud of this one. But I'm about to go to bed. I will see y'all next week. We got 2 more weeks, y'all. 2 more weeks. And y'all let me know if y'all want to do the finale week, because I know they do episode 10 and the reunion. Y'all let me know if y'all want to do it as a live and we could just talk about it without me having to take notes. But y'all let me know down below. If not, we'll just do the recap like normal. But yeah, I'll see y'all next week. Peace.